Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the British Columbia Museums Association webinar. My name is Lorenda Calvert, and I will be your host for today. Today's webinar topic is COVID-19 Relief Museum Assistance Program Funding Q&A. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the BCMA offices are located on the traditional lands of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and learn here in mutual respect and appreciation. We also recognize the traditional lands of the many nations across British Columbia where the work of the projects described in our webinars have been carried out. As I mentioned, I'm Lorenda Calvert, your host for today. I'm also BCMA's Programs Coordinator. Our pronouns are she, her, and thank you so much for joining us today. As you may be able to see, we are using a different platform today for our presentation. So I've enabled closed captioning. It's live closed captioning, so there may be some words that are slightly incorrect. We also enable closed captioning for our recorded webinars on YouTube. So you can check those out. The link is on our webinar page on our website. A little bit of housekeeping. Please use the chat function to ask questions or make comments. I will read your comments or questions out to the host. Well, it's not necessary to save your questions until the very end. Our host today will be going over a little bit of information and then we can open it up to Q&A. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties today, please do email our offices. Vanessa, our operations manager, is standing by to assist, and Vanessa's email is on the slide there. Our two presenters today are calling in, so we are hoping that we don't have any dropped calls or any technical difficulties on that end. So fingers crossed everything works out. And as I mentioned, if you do have questions or comments, please use the chat feature. The chat feature may be hidden, so just hover your mouse at the top or bottom of your screen. And the chat one is the one where you want to pop your questions into it. This month's presenters are Colleen Craig and Pierre Stolte from Canadian Heritage. Now over to you, Colleen and Pierre. Colleen, did you join us again?
I did. Sorry about that. So I'm just on the phone and can't see the screen, but I am here.
Wonderful. And Pierre, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. So I'm going to share the guidelines now, and then I'll just mute myself, but I'll be hanging out. There you go.
All right. Thank you.
So they're up now, Colleen.
So first things first, I'm so glad that everyone is here. This funding really is intended to be like a shot in the arm to help support heritage organizations through this unprecedented times. So it is flowing through the Museums Assistance Program, but the eligibility and the criteria for all of this is different, and it is really intended to support as broad a range of organizations that care for a collection as possible. And relatively speaking, this is the easiest application process that certainly I've ever delivered. And I'm hoping we can just walk through it all together, and everyone here will be able to apply if you meet the basic eligibility. And maybe I should add here just a warning that both Pierre and I are kind of cobbling together some technologies, and both of us have spotty reception. So just apologies in advance if one or both of us cut out, and hopefully between the two of us, at least one of us will be audible and will be here speaking to you. So first, I'll review the guidelines, which are available on the website. Then Pierre will walk us through the application form, and that'll be just all the information that you'll need to be able to do your own application. You could even start it as we're doing this presentation. And then finally, we will open up for any other specific questions if you still do have areas that you're uncertain on or want further clarity. So I hope on your screen you'll be able to see the guidelines for the COVID-19 Emergency Support Fund. So you can see here we do have the overall objectives of the MAP program. Again, this is much broader than those more limited goals for the regular program. Maybe as an aside, if you do have questions about the regular MAP program, you can certainly contact me afterwards. The deadline is November 1st. We're not expecting any major changes, but this presentation will just be focused on the COVID emergency support. So you can see there that the federal government does have various programs, and certainly look into all those other options. For this funding, the Emergency Heritage Support Fund, you can apply to all of these other programs. It doesn't matter as long as you're not applying the same money to the same activity. The only one that you cannot apply for will be Canada Council for the Arts. So if you're in that boat where you could be eligible to one or the other, please let me know and we'll just verify which one is the better fit for you, and that'll be the one in which you get the most money. So we'll go through that together. All right, now you can apply anytime from now until September 1st. There is a possibility we may extend that deadline as well, but I really encourage folks to get this in as soon as possible. We really want to see everyone that can apply now so that we get you in the system. So in terms of eligibility, we've modified the regular criteria. So you can read through the actual definitions here, but it really is, if you have a heritage collection of any size or type, and you've had some regular access to the public, you are eligible. So you can be an archives, you can be a First Nation, you can be a city, anything, but that you care for a heritage collection and you've made it available to the public. We did have, originally, you had to have an operating budget of at least $10,000. We've now lowered that to $2,000, and we've capped it at $3 million. So as long as you're within that range, you will be eligible. If you have any questions about specific eligibility, let me know, because I will work with you to see, confirm if you're eligible or not before you start the work of an application. So the eligible projects, really this is not project-based funding. This really is just, as I said, a shot in the arm just to help organizations continue to exist, I guess, essentially throughout this time. So there's no project per se, but you do have to spend this money on sort of museum-y expenses that you've incurred this federal fiscal year. So essentially, if it's something to do with regular museum operations, it'll be eligible. There is some limits on sort of capital costs like renovations, and if you have a question about that specifically, please let us know, because we have another program that could cover those costs, the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. So you would be could be eligible to apply to that program. So other than that though, any of your regular operating costs are eligible. If you want to pay rent, you want to pay existing staff, you want to hire a temporary staff, you want to put up any kind of plexiglass or COVID related expenses, anything like that is eligible. I should say here, so you very unusual for government, this actually will fund retroactively. So any cost incurred between April 1st, 2020, all the way up to March 31st, 2021, will be eligible. So you do have to spend this money this year, but again, it can cover costs that you've already incurred. So, again, you can read through the guidelines for the ineligible expenses as well, but if you do have questions about that, let me know. But essentially, as long as you would have enough eligible expenses, then that's fine, because we can fund 100% of those eligible costs. And you'll see as we get down here, the funding is set. So when you fill out the application form, there's a formula based on whatever your operating costs incurred in 2019 or whatever your last completed fiscal year is. That's how what we use to determine how much money you will get. So you will know how much money you can expect to receive. So if you look through there, we have the formula. The formula is listed, and so depending again on however much your 2019 operating budget was, that's the money you will receive. So just confirm you would be able to spend however much money, and then that's it. In rare cases, we have had a few examples where folks underwent a significant capital project in that year, and occasionally people have actually wanted less money than they were eligible to receive, and that's fine as well, but that shows you the maximum you can request. So continuing along the guidelines, so we'll go through in more detail the actual application form with Pierre, but you can see here, it's easiest to get everything ready before you actually start the application. So you can see here, you will need to know who could be an authorized signatory for your organization. Typically that's a board chair, but often the CEO or executive director position has been given authority. Whoever, it can be anyone to do the application form, but if it's not the authorized signature person, you will need to include an additional piece. So the application form is what you do online. So you just go through it step by step, and then you will need to have documents ready to attach. So that would be your most recent financial statement. So that's really your last completed year, so 2019 or so, and whatever, it can be audited, but it can also be internally produced. It just needs to be a completed year. You will need to have proof of legal status. Even if you've applied to us before, this is a whole new system, and so you will have to reattach that, even if you have actually submitted that through the regular MAP components. So that's typically certificate of incorporation, or and if you're unincorporated, which we don't normally find under MAP, but there is a additional form within the application process that you just need to complete. You do need to include a direct deposit form. Again, even though you have completed this for the regular MAP program, unfortunately the new system doesn't talk to our current one, and so you do need to include this again. And most importantly is that voided blank check. So make sure your scan is clear, because that's the banking information that we need to have so that we can make the deposit. The other piece that you may need to have, if you don't have the authorized person actually completing the form, is that you need to have proof of that you have the authority to submit the application. So the easiest way to do that is get your board chair just to send you an email saying, I authorize the submitting this application, and I give signing authority for this application to, and then say the name of the person. So this can all be done online, which is pretty exciting for us. We've never had that before. There is options to do a PDF form, and you could mail it in or email it in. So that you need to contact us directly to receive. So let us know if the online one is an issue for you, but it tends to be simpler all around if you can just do the online portal. Moving into evaluation, this really isn't evaluating an application. We're just kind of verifying that you're eligible and that you've completed all the information. So again, if you're eligible, you will receive whatever the funding formula spits out for you. But it is just confirming that everything is complete and you've attached all the required documents. So you can see there, the criteria. The attestation, we get a lot of questions about this one. Honestly, so we know everyone has been impacted by COVID-19. There is certainly a range in there. We know some have been more, individuals and organizations have suffered more than others, but certainly everyone has had some impact. And so even if you were, occasionally some people were able to remain open throughout this, and some people had to close fully, will be closed longer. Everyone has had an impact, so that's fine. So as long as you've had any kind of impact, negative impact, then that's enough for this. You don't need to come up with a separate statement. All right, so application processing time. So we do say here that we're aiming for 4 to 6 weeks from the day you hit officially submit into that portal. We're really trying hard to make that deadline, but just to be honest, sometimes we haven't, particularly the earlier batches. So this is improving as we go, but that'll give you a general sense of how long you'll need to wait. You do receive an automatic email right away after you've hit submit, so make sure you've received that to make sure it's gone through. If you haven't received that, you can follow up with either Pierre or myself. And then you will hear from us within, usually within a week or two if something is missing. Otherwise, it really is just that wait until you then will receive a letter by email, so an email really, that will just confirm the funding decision. And then within that, receiving that letter, within sort of 5 to 10 days, you should receive the electronic deposit of the full payment of whatever the amount was. So how funding is provided as we move down. So in this case, they will all be grants. I think probably most of you are familiar with that. A contribution agreement is like a grant, but you have to do a legal agreement, and you sort of list out the deliverables and a schedule of payment. That's actually not going to apply in this case. These will all be grants, so you can sort of ignore that. And it mentions there, of course, a final report, but we will not be doing contributions. These will all be grants, and you will not need to submit any kind of financial reporting at the end of this process. It really, again, is just to try to get money out the door to support organizations through this difficult time and try to help people still be employed and still keep the facilities that care for collections operating. Now, there are a few other pieces here that are important, but again, don't really apply in this kind of case. Certainly, we would want organizations that receive any kind of funding from the department to be an ethical and safe place to work. So these elements are important to us, but there isn't any kind of requirement of reporting for these sorts of things. In terms of official languages for our region, BC, Yukon, Alberta, French is the official minority language. The official languages requirements that are set out, again, we aren't going to have any reporting requirements, and so the only requirement here is if you are acknowledging this funding, you can just use the Canada word mark, or if you wanted to say something, it would need to be in both French and English. We have a link on the website for those kinds of word marks and language in the Guide to Public Acknowledgement. So if you were to do that, you can just go on and get the link and then get the official word mark there. So just again, moving through the guidelines. So just all government, there is always, we do follow protocols related to access to information requests. It's pretty unusual in terms of our funding and the disclosure of information. So all of the information that you provide is part of those protocols, but there's also those are, you would have to go through the official process to request any of this kinds of information. On our website, we do disclose all those organizations, the project title and the funding amount for $25,000 and up. But all it says there is the name of the organization, the name of the project, and the amount. All right, so as in any case, anyone could be audited randomly at any time, so there is always that. And so you would certainly keep your own books. But this is operating money, and so certainly, again, as long as you have enough eligible expenses, there won't be any issue with whatever you spend this on. And this would just be sort of the normal financial work that any organization does to stay in good financial health. So that's really it. There is, you can see here, there are various email, phone, etc., but that's for our main headquarters in Ottawa. I would really encourage you to just reach out directly to either Pierre or myself, and we will help with any questions. But you can certainly go through these official channels as well. You can read through the glossary should you need it, but it's pretty straightforward stuff, I hope. So that's it in terms of the guidelines. Next, Pierre will walk us directly through the form, but in the meantime, if there are any questions, I'm not quite sure how this would work, Lorenda, but maybe you could read out any questions or let me hear any audio.
Sure. We have a question in regards to funding for someone who exceeds the annual expenses. So they are saying, we are a rural and remote heritage site with annual expenses of over $3 million. We are not eligible for this program or any other program or any other COVID-related financial supports, except CEWS, which will be phased out in November. and they're inquiring on who they could talk to plead their case about the impacts they are facing. Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, good question. And certainly there are, of course, a lot of organizations that have operating budgets over $3 million. Please email me directly. Just give me a very, very short description of your organization, and I'll follow up with you. We are tracking those larger organizations. Similarly, for those smaller organizations that have operating budgets under 10K, we were also tracking those. And we were able to open up the eligibility criteria for the smaller organizations. So we're keeping a list of those larger ones, and if there is additional money available, or if there might be a new pot of money, we would want to know, who those folks are, and make sure that you're kept in the loop on that. This money really is intended to support the smaller to medium-sized museums, essentially, and those caring for a collection. So that is the purpose of this fund. Organizations that are larger and that have other activities like interactive stuff, or beyond caring for a collection and exhibiting that to the public, those might fall into a different category. So we might be able to carve off the Museum Z budget of your larger overall operating budget is another possibility. It depends on the circumstances. So please email me directly, and we'll look at your case and see what we can do.
Thank you. And I just want to say that I will be including the email addresses in the follow-up email that the BCMA sends with the recording. I see that the person who posed the question just asked that in the chat, so I will be sending an email with all of Colleen and Pierre's email addresses, so you can contact them directly. We have another question about funding. Should the 2019 expenses reported be the amount of the annual budget, or the amount actually spent? Due to flex, the budget and what was actually spent may differ.
It should be your last completed year. So what it usually, so it's around 2019. Sometimes that, depending on your dates, that can go over, even 2018 or 2020. So it's just whatever your last completed year is. And yes, it would be your actual expenses for that year. Again, if you have any concerns about how your financial statement is expressed, you can certainly run it by me ahead of time, and we can make sure it's clear, and you attach what the best document to the portal.
Thank you. So those are the two questions we had right off the bat. So should we move on to Pierre's section?
Yeah, great.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to share the form. There we go.
Okay, so here is the application form. It's got 7 sections, lettered A through G. When you're filling out an application, please be sure that all the sections are there. We've had recently a glitch where the B section on eligibility just didn't appear for an applicant. I don't know why, but I just want you to make sure that you fill out the eligibility. Otherwise, you're not eligible. So starting with applicant information, it's very straightforward, just your organization name and address and all the information there. There's some question about official language of choice. And then there's the contact for official correspondence. That's where when we send you the notice that we've received the application, and when we send notice that you've been approved, that's where that will go, and to that person. The authorized representative, they will need to either be the board chair or the president, or you will have to have attached some form of document giving them signing authority. And it has to be clearly giving them signing authority. So yeah, that has been the biggest, in my experience, gap in applications, is that they're failing to have the signing authority for the person that is filling out the application. And moving on to the organization information, it's your legal status, and it asks if you're incorporated. If you're not, you're then, if it's a not-for-profit, you would fill out the unincorporated form that's available. And if you're a municipality, if you don't have an incorporation number, you just refer to yourself as not incorporated. I'm just looking here. I don't see anything else. There's a couple of yes/no questions. Yes, sorry. And then we get on to the eligibility section. Oh, sorry. First, the heritage collection items. Just before that, you need to put the number of items in your collection, and then the number of items in your archives, and what measurement you're using, whether that's linear feet or cubic feet. Then we go on to eligibility. Sorry. So the eligibility determination, it's a series of yes/no questions, and essentially once you get to a certain point, it's just going to go, okay, you're eligible, and move you on. I think if you answer no to any of them, that's when you drop off. Oops. And become ineligible. Sorry, I'm using a paper copy at the same time as we have the screen because due to my phone reception in my old house, I cannot use my computer. So I'm sitting outside and it's just not the best, I know, and I apologize for that. So now we're moving on. Yeah, as Colleen mentioned, the direct deposit is next. Oh, sorry, no, it isn't. Funding total annual expenses, as we've discussed. You put in your total annual expenses. If you're putting in a budget amount that is different from your audited or unaudited financial statements, please include a document explaining your logic for why that amount is in there. It will just help us not have to do a back and forth and delay processing of your application. Sorry, now moving on. The direct deposit, you need to fill out that form and send in the check, as Colleen mentioned. And then there's the formula below, which I believe this is the old application. It's the only changes, the amounts have changed, I think. Yeah. And then moving on to the next page, which is the checklist. This is really more for you than anything, just to make sure you include all the documents you need to include. And then we move on to section E, which is the attestation. And the person who creates the account, and which is the one that says signing authority in the section A, their name is what's going to come up here. So you have to make sure that whoever's doing the application has the authority to do the application. And there's just a lot of government legalese here, just to ensure that people, it's just legal stuff. And then comes section F, which is the unincorporated form. So if you are unincorporated, this is what you would fill out. And then G is more of the direct deposit to enroll you into it. And that's where you include the check. And that is my very, very quick burn through the guidelines. They are really straightforward. There's no narrative that needs to be crafted. It's just a matter of putting in information and attaching documents. And that's pretty well all I have. Colleen, is there anything you wanted to add or correct?
I think that covers it there. We can certainly move on to if there are any other specific questions on the application form.
Yeah, we have a few questions popping up. So the first question we've got here, regarding the signing authority, we have 3, the president, VP, and treasurer. Does it still need to be the president/chair?
If the president or/chair is the signing authority, it's really simple because they have automatic signing authority by virtue of being the president or chair. Anyone else, you need a document giving them express permission.
Thank you. Another question, what do you mean by the linear feet details of your collection?
So that one, that's for if you're in archives. Typically archives, that's the general way to add up the collection size. So if you have artifacts, it's usually a number of artifacts. Say you have, 500 artifacts. If you have an archives, it's typically done in linear, meters or feet. So you might have, 10 meters of archival materials. That question, I'll just say there, it's really just to give a general sense of how much is out there. The application is not based on that. So if you round that off, perfectly fine. Typically people know exactly how many artifacts they have, but you might have an average for your archival material. So don't sweat that one, just give your general sense of how much you've got.
Thank you. Another question here. We are a museum operated by a conservation authority, bracket governing organization. So our legal name and incorporation number, etc., is for the conservation authority. Is this problematic?
I'm assuming there it's maybe more an environmental, so rather than a heritage either way, it does not matter. You can be part of a university or a municipality or another organization, but and that would be your legal applicant name. However, you do of course need to have a distinct mandate and budget for that heritage piece. So within that, you would have, if you've got so the overall organization might have financial statements for the entire operations, but you will need to be able to produce a separate operating budget within that, and that's what this would be based upon.
Thank you. We have another question here regarding providing signing authority. They are the acting director, and they are the ones expected to enter into contracts. Several years ago, they were authorized to be a bank signer in the motion at a board meeting, but they don't know if there's anywhere in their bylaws that says the director is the one who has the authority to enter into contracts. Will the motion be sufficient to authorize them as the signing authority?
Yes.
Great.
Short
answer. I love a simple answer like that.
Maybe I could just add here. So yes, certainly, honestly, the easiest thing here for any of those kinds of situations is have your chair send. You just need to send, the chair needs to send an email with just one sentence saying, I, the chair of X Society, authorizes, name of the executive director to submit this application and has all signing authority for this application to Canadian Heritage. And then just attach that email.
Thank you. We've got a question here. So if you have substantial outdoor collections, do you measure that as well as the indoor archive? They are referring to about a large truck length.
So again, the length is only for archival material. So artifacts, like one truck, if it's a toy truck or gigantic off-road logging truck, it counts as one. Archival materials, just because the nature of that collection, it's typically expressed in like the meters or feet. So it's just the nature of how the difference between an archival and artifact collection are measured. You might not have an archives and only artifacts, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. But those are kind of generally accepted Canadian museum or international ways of measuring collection sizes.
Thank you. That's something I didn't know before. We've got two questions from two different folks about the same thing, which is that the online form they are working with is quite different and has much less detail. Both folks are interested in knowing where they can find the full application. Is there a link that I can send out with the email following this webinar?
I think you have to ask us for the PDF, Pierre. I don't think anywhere on the website, do you know, I don't think you can access this. This is a shortened version. So if you're on the online portal, yeah, there has been updates as we've gone. I think everyone can appreciate this was a brand new system that Ottawa created out of nothing, and so there were certainly more glitches in the beginning that have been fixed. But we are still finding some weird ones. But yeah, the look and feel has changed a little bit as well. But the online portal is, again, it is the easiest way, and it gets you in the system quicker. And you just have to go through all of the questions. Eventually, you will be asked all of the questions that you can see in the form that Pierre went through. Again, if you say yes or no to certain questions, you might not see the next one, depending on how you answer, but it is the same, all the same information will be captured. So that said, if you do want a paper version, you need to email, I'm pretty sure you need to email us definitely, if you email us, we will give you a paper form, but it'll be processed quicker if it is done online.
Beautiful, thank you. And that answers one of the other questions that just popped up in the chat, which is about how to get a hard copy. We have another question here. Can the secretary of the organization fill out the form and put the signing authority's info, recognizing that the president asked the secretary to complete the application?
Yes. So again, yeah, but you need that email from the president to whoever fills out the form. That's the easiest way to go. Just have the president send a one-sentence email just saying, yes, I acknowledge and give you authority to apply for this COVID-19 emergency funding, and then attach that email to the form.
So in that case, the secretary would include their name as the signing authority and link that email as evidence that they have received signing authority.
Yes, for this application.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So far, that's all the questions I have that have popped up, but maybe we'll just give folks a few more seconds in case they have anything else that they'd like to ask.
Sure, and we'll wait another minute or so. I just want to say again, please do apply for this support. The money is for you during these crazy times. It's for organizations that are caring for a heritage collection and making it available to the general public. This money really is just a little bit of money to help support organizations, because heritage is important. We want to ensure that both the people that care for the collection and the collection themselves stay in the public domain and are here for Canadians now and for the future. So that's what this money is for. It's to care for those collections and through this time. And we are here to help. So both Pierre and I are program officers based here. We're both based in Vancouver, but we serve all of BC, Yukon, and Alberta. And we can certainly help you through this process. If you're having any challenges, you can reach out to us directly. And if you do go through this process and find it okay, at least. I will say, in terms of the government, normal government applications, this one is by far more straightforward and easy to do. And we're hoping that you do let other people know throughout your own networks that this money is there for them, that now is the time to apply. It is just this one-off COVID-related emergency support. So once the ending date closes, that'll be it. So we do want this money to get out there to the heritage community. And it should take you no more than an hour, if that, to do the application and get it in the system.
Thank you. During that, we did have 2 more questions that popped up, so that's great.
Okay.
One of the questions, just to clarify, is proof of legal status required if the museum is part of a larger entity, example, museum, municipality?
Yes. I know this one's always a little bit confusing because you're kind of using both when you're applying. But so often, they'll like say the example of a municipal museum. So you might be the museum of the town of whatever. And so you would be maybe within the Parks and Rec budget or something of the town. So you would need the municipality to apply. So, say it's the city of Vancouver or wherever. But when you answer all the information, it is, of course, about the actual museum. I guess in this case, it doesn't really apply because the Museum of Vancouver is not a municipal, under the municipal budget. But when you apply, you need proof of existence of the legal applicant. So, but any kind of municipality or university or First Nation or whatever will have its own legal documents. So whatever that is for that entity, you can include that because your museum would be under the umbrella of that larger entity. Sorry, I hope that made sense. So you would need proof of incorporation of the university or city or First Nation, and then your museum would be under that entity.
So then for a municipal museum, do they also have to fill out the unincorporated liability form?
No. There's fine print in there, but municipalities are exempt from that. Really, it's because, I mean, of course, a municipality would have to abide by certain legal restrictions, and they would have liability, and they would have, bankruptcy insurance, all that kind of stuff. So we know you would already have it.
Thank you. We have a question here. They work for a First Nation who holds a large collection of artifacts in their cultural center. They're not fully sure if they would be eligible as they aren't a museum. There are some artifacts on display in cases, and they do have some public access, but not regular daily public operating hours. Are they?
Okay, I should have confirmed there. So regular hours does not mean full-time. So you can be seasonally operated, you can be open one Saturday a month. It doesn't matter, but you do need to be, so regular hours just means that the public knows that they can come in and view those artifacts at a certain, whatever the operating hours are. If you want to confirm that with me, please email me directly and I'll give you a yay or nay. But likely that you would be eligible. And maybe I should have said as well, so the term museum is very broad. We generally use the ICOM definition of museum, but again, in this case, this funding is flowing through the Museums Assistance Program, but the intent here is to support as broad a range of heritage organizations as possible. So it's any organization, unincorporated, incorporated, seasonal, part-time, whatever, all volunteer run, no problem. What matters here is just that you have a collection that would be considered a heritage collection by your peers, and that you do provide public access to it. And public access, again, it does need to have some regular hours open to the public, but it can be quite minimal, and it can include researchers online or like various means of accessing that collection. So in that case, please do contact me directly and I'll confirm with you, but you are likely eligible.
Thank you very much. And I just want to reconfirm for everyone that there will be an email sent out following this webinar with a webinar recording, as well as Pierre and Colleen's emails. There'll be links so you can just email them directly from that email, and barring any technical challenges, that email will be sent out this afternoon. Now looking, I don't see any more questions in our Q&A or in our chat. And it does sound like if there are any more questions out there, that you can reach out to Colleen and Pierre directly to get some advice and feedback. We've got a thank you saying that was very helpful, so that's lovely. I'm glad that was helpful for everyone. Any last words, Colleen? Or yeah, any last words, Colleen or Pierre?
Just again, I know everyone is struggling to different degrees through all of this, but heritage is important, and we do need to, stay together as a community and help one another. So, if you are considering applying for this at all, please do, and you can reach out to Pierre or myself to confirm your eligibility before you get into the work of the application. But also, again, tell your communicate to your network about this, and make sure people do apply, because folks who wouldn't normally be eligible under Museums Assistance Program are under this program, and we really want this money to be spent and at least, get out there to as many organizations as possible and help the heritage sector, writ large. So we do hope to have everybody apply that is eligible and wants to, and the money should, get out the door fairly painlessly, at least in government terms, and it can be used again for any eligible expenses that you've incurred this year. So it is a pretty broad range available for support.
Pierre, anything to add?
Well, I just want to thank you, Lorenda, and thanks to Colleen, and to everyone who took the time to listen to the presentation. And please, if you think you're eligible, apply.
Thank you so much, Colleen. Thank you so much, Pierre. And thank you everyone for joining us today. That was really helpful for myself to understand the process, and I hope it was helpful for all of our webinar participants. I just want to encourage folks to join us in September. We have a webinar coming up on Wednesday, September 9th. It's an introduction to BC Arts Council funding for museums and Indigenous cultural centers. I also just want to remind folks that there will be an email that comes to your inbox following this webinar with a survey. Please fill that out. It helps us with our webinar planning. And if you have any suggestions for topics for the remainder of the year and for the year ahead, do please email me at programs@museumsassn.bc.ca. And please consider joining us as a member. As a member with the BCMA, we have funding opportunities, free webinar participation, reduced registration fees for conference, regional workshops, and other special events, and access to professional development resources that support you and the work your museum, gallery, cultural center, archives, library does, including the Roundup magazine, regular e-newsletters, and access to job postings, contract opportunities, and more. Thank you again, Colleen and Pierre, for joining us this morning. Thank you so much for our webinar participants for joining us as well. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. Goodbye.